There we go. Hey, and welcome to Dare to Be Authentic podcast. I'm your host, Maury Mitchell, and I have a very special guest. His name is Matt Melvin. He is author of Bullied Behind Bars. He ended up in prison because of one mistake and suffered so much duress and so much abuse during prison. But he now has taken responsibility for his poor life choices, and he's written Bullied Behind Bars, which chronicles his life's feeling like an outcast, enduring a lonely and friendless childhood, and being punished for a crime that began with the honorable goal of trying to make a living. So welcome to the show, Matt. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Very good. So let's talk a little bit about what inspired you to write your book, Bullied Behind Bars.
Several reasons. The first would be I don't want to have anybody else go through the pain, torment, torture, embarrassment that I went through. Two, it was cathartic to put my feelings, my emotions, my thoughts on paper.
Mm-hmm.
This is not the first time I was writing. If you actually follow me on Instagram, Bully Behind Bars, you can see the poems that I wrote.
Okay.
So that was my first stint, so to speak, with writing.
Okay, very good. I love the way you say about the cathartic part because I'm an author myself and I wrote about some life experiences, and it is very cathartic to put things down in paper. Tell us a little bit about that. How did that help you?
I was doing it in secret
Mhm.
because it's taboo to write about guards and inmates.
Oh,
Sometimes it was more challenging in certain facilities. Most facility that I didn't actually have a cellmate because I was put in solitary confinement. The inmates would lie to the guards and tell them that I tried to proposition them, and then they would put me in solitary confinement. So there were benefits and problems being in solitary confinement. One advantage being in solitary confinement was I didn't have to worry about being attacked or writing.
right. Of course. Yeah, yeah. Absolutely.
However, I was locked in for 23 hours a day.
Mm,
I was able to really hone my skills in terms of being in the word, the Bible every single day and praying, which has allowed me to have that discipline today because on the outside world, it's a lot easier to get distracted by social media, by TV, by sports, and generally with life. When
yes.
you're in solitary confinement and you or in jail, you don't have a phone, you don't have social media, you don't have a computer, you just have three hots and a cot, so to speak.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Thank you. So let's go back a little bit and talk a little bit about your late autism diagnosis and the kind of consequences that had on you.
It wasn't until I saw a psychiatrist during my mental health evaluation for the federal sentence that I got diagnosed.
Okay.
As a result, I knew I was different. However, I always say there's always two ways to look at things. You can look at something negatively or you can look at something positively.
So true.
I choose to look at the positivity about what I bring to the world. I
Hmm.
bring enthusiasm, eagerness, spontaneity, the ability to think outside of the box,
Right.
which a lot of times people don't have. I also have a fearlessness about me, which is part of the issues that caused me to break the law in the first place.
Right. Yeah, that makes total sense. Very good.
With
So,
mental health, there's no medication that's going to eradicate the problem.
okay.
All a pill does is change somebody's personality for a short period of time.
Mm,
However, there's always side effects. And a lot of times people get hooked on a drug And then it's hard to get rid of that addiction.
Right. Yeah, that's very common. And so, how old were you when you were diagnosed?
35.
Wow. Okay. And so, after that diagnosis, did things change for you for the better?
Perhaps yes, perhaps no. I can't say for certain that it was positive.
Hmm.
Although today I have learned skills that help me better use my diagnoses for the benefit rather than as a negative. In
Right.
other words, I've learned how to negotiate and use my impulsiveness, which is the shadow of Asperger's, to my benefit.
Right. I love that you say that, Matt, because when people hear a diagnosis, autism, Asperger's, whatever it may be, ADHD, it has a negative connotation with it. People say, "Oh my gosh, this is so bad." But the fact that you're bringing up, yeah, there's good things. There's good things that you hold. There are good things that you were born with to help the world. And so making use of that not only helps you, but it helps humanity, just all humanity, don't you think?
Absolutely, no question. If everybody was the same, this world would be very, very boring.
Right.
I want friends that aren't ashamed of who they are, that have a personality, because I've been around men and women that I just don't think there's much to them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I get very bored easily.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, awesome. So what do you think was the main thing that you learned while you were incarcerated?
Journaling, reading my Bible, praying, talking about what's going on with me with friends,
Hmm.
finding that tribe of men and women who can understand me, telling people that I have Asperger's and I'm on the Asperger's spectrum early on. That way, if there's an issue, we can go our own separate ways. I
Right.
feel that transparency and honesty is absolutely critical in every friendship I have. I don't want friendships that are based on sugarcoating, lying,
Hmm.
deception at any point.
That's wonderful. I love that. So as you began to share, because obviously you hadn't done that before, as you began to share more honestly about yourself, how did that feel for you?
It felt amazing that I didn't have to hide, repress, and deny who I really am.
I love that. I love that. It takes a lot of courage. That's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on my podcast because it's called Dare to Be Authentic. It takes a lot of courage to show the world, to show even a couple of friends who you really are, because society wants you to mask it, to use all this stuff, mask yourself and be someone else. And that does not make us happy at all.
We all wear face masks
Hmm.
as a means of protection.
Right.
However, that doesn't serve anybody. Whenever I get to know somebody, I notice a pattern of things that they may say. So I have a friend, and every single time I ask him how he is, he'll always say, "I'm doing good." And that's a face mask
Hmm.
to prevent me from getting to know exactly who he is.
Right.
And when I get that sense, it causes me to retract because I don't know if this person is genuine.
Right. Yeah, I can understand that. So you're following your
It's really
intuition there.
memoir is really where I started really getting in touch with who I am. Those six emotions we've been taught, I call them sachet: sad, angry, scared, happy, excited. I don't like the T, it stands for tender. I replace that with loving.
I love that.
And oftentimes, because I've staffed many, many men's weekends, a man will check in that he's full sachet, which means he's all six emotions at once. No. You cannot be six vastly different emotions at the same time. I would venture to say that you can't be six emotions all in one day. Maybe. It depends on what happens. A cataclysmic event would have to happen to cause that to occur.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Okay. Awesome. So I'm so glad that you have been able to come to the point where you can share who you really are. It's just a wonderful thing. I went through my life doing the same thing, wearing a mask, because I wanted to be nice and be liked. And after I came out of that, it just felt like I can't even explain how wonderful that felt. So, what is the main message you want to bring to the public, Matt?
Don't wear a face mask. Be who you are. Stand up for who you are. Don't allow others to condemn you.
Hmm. Yeah,
Dare to be different.
I like it. I love that. Dare to be different because we all are different. God made us all different for a reason. Like you said, how boring would this world be if we were all the same, like little robots we'd be, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Nobody wants to feel like they're having a conversation with a robot.
That's so true. That's so true. I love that. Very good. So, in this main message, I'm sure that that message is in your book as well. Let's talk about your book for a little bit.
What would you like to know?
I'd like to know, while you're talking about how you wrote it, your inspiration for it. Initially, you wrote it just to tell your life, your story as a cathartic method, but I know there's more to that.
Yes. One, my inspiration was Anne Frank,
Oh, wow.
going through the torment that she went through. Because here's the thing, I didn't actually know if I would survive and get out.
Mm, wow.
There were death threats against me at one of the institutions. They confiscated my journal entries. At another facility, when I was in solitary confinement, I called my brother to let him know that I felt like my life was in danger by a certain guard.
Hmm.
And my brother said, I will take care of it. Within 2 hours, May Chow from Secret Service and John Schroeder from IRS, the same two that investigated me and followed me around for about 2 years, showed up at my brother's place of work and threatened him.
Wow.
Even though my call was recorded, I know that these institutions could just erase things. People
Yeah.
have a tendency to sometimes disappear, just
Yes.
like Jeffrey Epstein.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So as you wrote the book and now that you've published it, first of all, how did it feel to have your book published? That's amazing.
It felt amazing, amazing relief to get it out there. But at the same token, I put real people's names, identified the corruption going on in the state of Vermont, which is another message for everyone that judicial corruption just doesn't occur in the major cities. It happened right here in the small state of Vermont with less than 600,000 people living in it, the second smallest state in the US in
Right.
terms of population.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So it's pretty widespread. Pretty
It
widespread.
is everywhere. There's an old saying, absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true. You're a very brave man. I gotta hand it to you, Matt. It takes a lot to do what you have done to put real names and real everything. Hardly anybody is willing to do that. So,
My family was paranoid that these people would come after me. My
right.
mother was convinced that members of the Aryan Brotherhood would show up at our house.
Hmm.
In 2022, on Father's Day, an individual I served with in prison, I didn't write about him in the book, actually showed up here at our house thinking he could stay here. That scared all of us. The fact that these news stations put my address on the internet is despicable.
I agree. I absolutely agree. But I know that you have a deep faith because you shared
I
that.
do. God has protected me. I had a near death experience in August 2015, driving on 495, going 72 miles an hour, which is much slower than I typically drive. When
Okay.
a Lexus SUV came down an embankment, crossed in front of my car, but by the grace of God, I was saved, I was protected. And that was the moment that I knew I needed to make a drastic change in my life. I needed to stop putting Jesus in the passenger seat and started putting God in the driver's seat because I had lived a life of stealing, being dishonest, and using people for my benefit.
Hmm.
And ever since then, I've had other near death experiences. I know God is watching out for me and protecting me.
Yes, absolutely. That's wonderful. That's wonderful that you know that. Uh, wow. Okay. Very good. So, what are the main ways that you help others now?
Sharing my testimony on podcast,
Hmm.
I would love to come speak. I'd love to be a public speaker. So if any of your listeners have a group of people that would be interested in having me speak, please email me, bulliedbehindbars@gmail.com.
Oh, that's
I
great.
also do men's work. I staff at a couple of men's retreats, and I love hearing men be vulnerable and share their life experience because I can always find commonality with guys that are willing to go deep.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you're saying. Society doesn't encourage men to be vulnerable. The old saying of boys don't cry, that kind of thing, which is what you probably grew up with. Boys still grow up with that even nowadays. So I think it's wonderful that you help men. I mean, again, be authentic, not try to be so strong and make believe like your friend. Oh, everything's fine, everything's good, everything's okay. Meanwhile, the life could be falling apart, right?
Right. But the issue is, I don't know if life is
Exactly.
falling apart because
Exactly.
he has a shell around him that he refuses to be vulnerable.
Hmm. Yeah.
One of my favorite questions to ask a potential friend is, have you ever had an affair? Because it tells me a lot about who that person is. Because if somebody's willing to have an affair, they're willing to divulge personal information on me because it's a premeditated plan. And
Interesting.
I actually have a friend that had an affair, and he told me that there's a rush, there's a thrill seeking component to it. And I can relate because I felt the same way when I'm driving 130 on the highway, when I drove off without paying for gas, when I tried to steal a car. There is that rush.
Mhm.
However, we as human beings need to learn how to use that rush for the good instead of the negative.
Yes, I totally agree, Matt. So give me an example of how you use Creative Rush for the good. Give the listener an example, really.
Going out very deep in the ocean and swimming, walking without caring what other people think of me,
Hmm. That's awesome.
sharing vulnerably at a men's weekend,
Yes.
opening up myself to perhaps rejection on podcast, speaking my truth.
Hmm. Yeah, those are all pretty scary things. I love when you put it that way because I've never heard anybody quite say taking that rush, because you always think of Rush being a daredevil, like you say, driving 120, that's pretty dangerous. And the rush is from something negative, something that could cause you harm. But this kind of rush is different. It's you putting yourself out there, stretching beyond what you normally, where you normally are. And that's scary as well.
I think a healthy rush is where there's no danger from anyone else. In other words, there's no potential loss of another human being. Driving 130, there's that risk that I could get in a car accident, I
Yep.
could get a ticket. So there is inherent risk. And I would venture to say there is some amount of risk in everything that we do.
Mm.
However, some things have less risk than another. One risk that I shared at a men's weekend is I sometimes drive on almost an empty tank to see if I can get to a gas station.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a healthy, in a way, risk. I'm not causing harm to anybody. However, if my car were to stall out on the highway, there is potential there.
Yes, yes, yeah.
But it was amazing when I shared that at a men's weekend and the facilitator had never heard of that. He was surprised by how many other men do the exact same thing,
Same thing. Uh-huh. So
which
on
a woman would
purpose.
probably never do.
So on purpose, not because you forgot to put gas in, right?
It's a rush.
Okay.
It's a it's one of those things that you have to be in the moment. I don't think a woman would ever do it. I remember being on an interview with a woman who said she doesn't leave anywhere without a full tank of gas. And obviously, you wouldn't do it in Wyoming or Montana,
Right,
where there's
right.
very few gas stations.
Yes, yes.
But I feel like we live in a society where there's so many restrictions about
Mhm.
taking risks.
Okay. Give us a couple examples about that. I'm interested about that.
There's risks to everything that we do. I think it's important for people to live their dream. My father, when I was probably 20 years old, had the opportunity to open up a business, and he didn't do it.
Mm,
He wanted to stay safe and be comfortable, and we have. But I think about how much my life could be different had he opened that business back then.
right.
But I think a lot of it because he had a family and he didn't want to be gone all the time.
Hmm. Yeah,
So he took the safe route. And I feel like a lot of people take the safe route in life.
I agree. I agree, Matt. I think that's so true. And that's why I have this podcast, Dare to Be Authentic, because the people who are on this show, like you are, don't take the safe path. I mean, sometimes we do, but not every time. There is a risk in doing anything new. There's a risk in starting a podcast and being on a podcast and anything that you step out of your comfort zone, like they say. There's always a risk, even like you said earlier, if it's a risk of humiliation. But the thing about humiliation is it doesn't have to be humiliating for us because we know who we are and what we stand for. Honestly, the one being humiliated is the one that's trying to humiliate you.
I know. I mean, I wrote about sitting judges that are currently sitting on the federal court bench. I wrote about a former police chief, Aaron Noble,
Mhm.
who praised Jesus, received a $200,000 payout to go away. We don't know exactly what happened. I have my suspicions and I'm not going to share them because I don't want to share something without having concrete facts to back it up. But the reality is he got a $200,000 payout in 2022 to go away.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, what is the most important thing that you want to tell the listeners?
Be who you are. Don't allow other people to push you into a corner where you can't be authentic. Speak your truth, be honest, be vulnerable. Don't be scared.
Mm, okay, that's great. So, what if somebody says to you, somebody's listening and they're saying to themselves, "Oh, it's easy for Matt to say that, but I'm too scared. How could I possibly do whatever X, Y, and Z? How do I get
Where's
over
that
my fear?
coming from? Where's that coming from?
What's the root of the fear?"
Right. I think it's always important to trace where that's coming from. What's the shadow belief? What's the old belief?
That's really good. I like that. That's excellent. So is that what you had to do in your life?
No question. Yes.
Okay.
Change that stinking thinking, old way of doing things.
Give us a couple of examples or tools that you used. I mean, it's easy to say change that thinking. People say, "Oh yeah, sure, my head's going round and round and round on this." What's one way to begin to change that thinking? Because it doesn't happen overnight.
Get rid of you, we, they statements. Start making I statements. When I do this, it makes me feel blank. Find a tribe of, if you're a man, men, if you're a woman, woman, that you are able to be vulnerable and share what's going on.
Right. And you're safe. It's a safe place.
Yes.
Yeah, that's very important.
One other thing is reflective listening. Somebody will share, and my job will be to paraphrase what they're saying. What I hear you saying is blank, and then
Okay.
finish that. We did that at a men's weekend. I was shocked to see how many men couldn't remember what that person said, don't pick me. Because the way we did it was we would have a circle and one man would share and he would pick anyone to reflect him that hasn't been chosen yet.
Okay.
That is where I really learned to listen, because most people listen with the intention to respond
Mhm.
rather than fully listening to what the person is saying. And if I say, don't pick me, don't pick me, don't pick me, then there's no way that I'm going to be able to reflect on what that man shared.
Yeah, absolutely. So, some people don't even listen to respond. Some people don't listen at all.
Because they're in their own head.
Hmm.
So get out of your head and free yourself of any barriers. And if you can't do it, step out of the circle.
Okay, that's fair. Very good. So, one last thing you'd like to say to a listener before we close.
Reach out to me, bulliedbehindbars at gmail.com. My Instagram address is Bullied Behind Bars, X, Bars Bullied. Facebook, Matthew.Melvin.5621. My book, Bullied Behind Bars, a gay Christian Trump supporter, is on Amazon. One more thing I want listeners to hear me say is dare to be authentic. Dare to step outside of a bubble that you've been living in and not be ashamed of what other people think. What other people think of me is none of my business.
That's right, Matt. So true. And I agree. I totally agree with that. It's such a feeling. Talk about a rush. It's such a feeling of just joy to finally step into who you really are. Yes, people fall away. We're not going to lie. You're going to lose some. I did, because those people were attracted to the person with the mask on, right? And so, but what's wonderful about it is that once you take your mask off and you are who you really are, or begin to step into it, it's a lifetime goal. It doesn't happen in one instant. You begin to attract the people who love the person who you really are, right?
Yes. And don't be afraid of people falling away. People come into your life for a certain period of time. Some people may come in for your entire life,
Hmm.
but most people come in for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, that's so true. They come in for a season and they come in for a reason. And sometimes you don't see it. You're grieving their loss. But then later, as you mature more and as you grow more, you realize, oh, wow, that person came into my life for this specific purpose. And that was done. And now they're gone from my life. But I have other people. I have new people. I have amazing people. So your tribe, as you say. Very good. Wow, you've shared so many great things, Matt. Thank you so much for being on the show. And all his information is right here. Just click on the podcast at the bottom. You can click into his book, to his Facebook. All the links will be provided there for you, so you can get a hold of Matt. Is there one last thing you want to say, Matt, before we close?
Casey Kasem said, keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars.
I like that. That's really beautiful. Thank you so much for being on the show. And thank you for listening in to Dare to Be Authentic podcast. And if you like this, please spread it around. It'll be available forever. And it's a great message that Matt had today. See you next time. Bye for now.